Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of www.StressFreeNow.info. Our guest today is our dear friend and coach, June Davidson. June is a certified master action coach, a seminar leader, trainer, speaker, and author. She is the president of the American Seminar Leaders Association. June is, in a word, extraordinary. Her effervescent joy, enthusiasm, and energy is contagious. She is graced with phenomenal insight, boundless compassion, and a selfless generosity of spirit. June uses her exceptionally keen mind and loving heart to guide you to recognize, acknowledge, and express your talents. We're so honored to have you here, June. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, and it's my honor to be here. Just thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, June. We are so happy you could join us today. And today's topic is the holiday season. June, with the holiday season fast approaching, can you discuss for our audience some of the ways that they can successfully handle the stress and anxiety surrounding the holiday period?
Absolutely, because at this time of the year, the stress is higher than any other time of the year. This is when the families come together, and of course, as you know, every member of the family doesn't always get along, and now we're all together, and people have the stress even before the coming together. Thanksgiving usually is not as stressful as Christmas and the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. I believe that it is sort of like a celebration the fall of the year, and the Thanksgiving usually does not include every member, every group. It may be smaller, and it may be seated around, the table, and not the full day. So it's a little different. However, when we get into the Christmas spirit, people are stressed out, and the top of the list is the finances. And that is so true with especially some of our younger families and the ones where both mother and father are working, and they're expected to buy gifts for a big family. And it is the stress. That is the highest stress of all. And there are ways of alleviating this. Stories, you know how I love stories. So, and we did this because, and it was just with a very small group, my girlfriend and a couple of other people, we decided what we were going to do is we were going to go to the thrift shops. We had to buy presents out of the thrift shop. And so it became a fun thing that we would start after Thanksgiving and find just the perfect gift for somebody in our group to celebrate, which we did on Christmas Eve. We may find books, brand new books. We may find brand new things. And it became a treat to shop in the thrift shops and come up with wonderful things to fit that person. So there are ways that this can be done. And when we're talking about that at the top of the list, and the people have no money, let them give their services. Let them give a gift certificate of services. It might be taking care of the children. It might be doing the shopping. It might be coming in and even cleaning house. And let the family express the joy of having that person do things for them. So there are many ways that you can get around and settle this, and it creates a tradition. It creates a tradition. So what family traditions do you have concerning money and spending at Christmas time?
Well, June, in your response, you made me think of something, an aspect of life that we often don't consider. Over time, I have met many people who have come to live in the United States, and they either became citizens or they're permanent residents here. And an aspect that many people aren't aware of is that some of the people who have emigrated to the United States, that they have stress and anxiety that others aren't aware of. And what I mean by that is that whenever they go back to their home countries, be it Mexico, the Philippines, or someplace in the Caribbean, there is an expectation, an extended family, extended community expectation that they have to come back showing that they have struck it rich in the United States and that they're doing well, and there's an expectation that they have to come back bearing gifts for everyone, and I mean everyone. And an example that I would give is that I was startled when we lived in New York. We took a taxi from JFK to our home in Brooklyn, and during that ride, I had asked the taxi driver where he was from, and he mentioned that he was from Haiti. And I said, I've been to Haiti once, I think it was Labadee on a cruise, and I asked him, well, when was the last time he had been home? And he says, well, I don't go home anymore. The last time I was home was over 10 years ago. And so I was puzzled. I said, well, do you still have family there? And he said, yes. He says yes, but if there's a problem when I go home. He said, I'm from a small village, and when I go home, people expect me to have gifts and pass out money. Mm-hmm. And so this is something startling to me, and I don't know if, for some of our listeners who don't have that experience. And so when you were talking, it made me think of that there are many segments of American society where people are experiencing different type of stress. So, for example, if a person came to the United States, left their family, and they're working here, and they're sending money home. And at some point, there's two things going on. One is that they've been away from their family and they miss them. Yes. And then two, the stress of when they do go back, there's that expectation. So I know you didn't know I was going to bring this up, but I was wondering, since you have such a wide range of experience, June, can you speak to that issue, that what could individuals who are in that situation, how could they reframe how they're perceiving that situation and dealing with it? Do you have any tips that perhaps that can help our audience who might be listening?
Yes, because what they need to do ahead of time is they must lower the expectation of the people and the family they're going in to see, because it is not easy for them to bring back the suitcase of money. And today, to even buy gifts and pay for what you have to passage on the airplane, that again is expensive. So ahead of time, even before it comes to the visit, and they send money back, and they will do without things here, which is wonderful because they're helping their family. But they need to have the family realize expectations this year is not going to be like it was last year. I've been out of work, or we don't have it. And they've got to lower the expectation to help relieve their stress. Otherwise, if they don't do that and they walk in without the gifts, then they are stressed out even more. Or if they've run it up on a credit card that they can't pay for, then they're stressed out even more when they get back. So these are some of the things, and thank you for bringing that up, because if you can lower the expectation of what the people expect, now then you shift around and say it can't be this year, so let's celebrate our just being together. And let's celebrate in a different way. What I was thinking, some of the things is like, the children even performing and singing and bringing in the joy of the holidays, and doing the family, switching the traditions and things of this nature, and not being around all of the gifting. I'm going to gift you my talent. So they just need to shift it, lower the expectation of what it is on that end expected of them. And they have to do it ahead of time. They have to face and be in integrity with it.
Yes, one of the things that you mentioned, June, just brought back a short encounter that I had that I'd like to share, that being creative at the holiday time, as you mentioned, rather than going out and buying an expensive gift, Someone once mentioned that because finances were tight, what they did was they regifted so that we can do a homemade gift, we can create something in the home, and that if we change our expectation to understand sharing time, building a relationship, that's the real gift of the holiday that we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. That is just wonderful. And you see, that then invites other people. You feel badly if somebody brings in a very expensive gift to you and you've not been able to do it. So lower the gifting from those people. Just say, this year we're going to do such and such, and instead of, bringing in a $500 gift, which some of them do, and you feel really badly, then let it shift. Let's have something different.
Well, June, every time you speak, you bring so much wisdom to your answers. And while you were giving your last two answers, it made me think of situations, stories that I've heard from different immigrant families, which to me were shocking. But what I'm in relationship to this gift giving aspect, and I'm actually not just talking about Christmas time. What I'm talking about is, let's say a person comes to the United States and they eventually bring people here, other family members, or they are trying to help family members in their home country. And one of the things that I've been surprised from hearing the story of the person who is doing the giving is that what they have later found is that even though they may be working 2 jobs here or even 3 jobs in some cases to help send back money or clothes or whatever, that there isn't always the appreciation from the recipients. And what I mean is, for example, I know of several cases where people worked very hard on this end to send down barrels of clothing, used clothing, etc. And you find out later that the people have turned up their nose and they said, well, how dare you send down these hand-me-down clothes that they're not brand new, they're not the latest style. In fact, I remember on a trip once, I had brought something to, I had promised, I went to the Bahamas and I had said I would bring the lady a cell phone. And when I went shopping, of course, I wasn't going to buy a high-priced cell phone, so I was just trying to get a cell phone that was when you make a promise that you're going to buy.
Yes.
And somebody you meet on vacation. So I went to an electronics store and I found this phone, and I guess in hindsight it was a little bit clunky, but when I gave it to the person, what I was surprised at is that they were not excited the way I was and give it to them. And then later speaking to some other people, and they said, well, in the Bahamas, we have to have the latest thing because we're cool, right? And so I was thinking about that sometimes that cool factor, that this myth, as you say, of the gift giving, that how can we bust through this myth that and get back to, as you say, the authenticity that we need to be at, where it's not about the things, it's about the love.
Right. And this part is what it truly is about, and I believe in creating a family tradition, because you can create it just with some of the things that have come up right now that we've been talking about. What can you do to create something traditionally that doesn't necessarily involve money? It doesn't have to be. Bring the children in. Let the children perform. Bring in the joy of being together and sharing. That's what the holidays are all about. And I'm going to tell you right now, Bob, we can't do all of this on one session because we are hitting the greatest stress of all, which is around the financing. So we've got to come back and do the other of the depression and other things that happen around the holiday time. But the finances are at the top. So let's go back and create a wonderful tradition of the day. And the smells. What was it that your family cooked that you could smell throughout the house and you knew it was holiday time?
Very good, June. As you are all too well aware, and I believe our audience is too, some of the most intense stress or anxiety we may feel during the holidays comes about from the anticipation of having to interact with a family member
Yes.
where there may be unresolved issues going all the way back to childhood. Or we may become stressed out thinking about how a particular family interaction might turn out, and we're running through the arguments in our mind. And if we don't frame it right, it can become very negative if two family members don't get along because they don't like each other. So, can you tell our audience what positive approaches they can take to resolve these types of issues, which tend to come up during the holiday period?
Oh, and that is the second stressor of all. And there is tremendous violence that happens because what takes place is, as we know, we have the drinking is exposed at this time, and if you've got somebody that can't handle it and they drink, they become nasty, and they know the scene is going to happen, so everybody is stressed. They don't want to come into the scene where one of the in-laws is that way or one of the family members is that way. So it's stressful, and I believe that knowing this is usually what happens in the family is to do separate celebrations. Separate the family. Have a Christmas Eve. Have a Christmas breakfast. But do it so that you don't have these encounters. And I believe it's all in the planning. I wouldn't want that to happen because it would not only destroy that, think of the influence and the effect it's going to have on the children. And the children are what Christmas is about. And here you've got an adult that goes into domestic violence and everybody sees it. You've got to do everything possible to avoid anything like this happening.
June, another key stressor during the holiday period is travel stress. Can you briefly lay out for our audience the kind of preparation and future-pacing activities individuals can engage in to lessen their stress and anxiety during the holidays, especially when traveling with children?
Yes, and that is something that happens if you're traveling with children and going a long distance, even driving. It doesn't have to be a long distance. Create activities for the children to take their mind away from, what's going on. They have a lot of excitement at this time of the year because they expect it to be all pleasurable. But the child can be stressed out from the travel, the airline travel, the automobile, the train, the bus, whichever way they're traveling, because you have to realize that there are crowds that normally would not be there. And everybody is planning their holiday time at one time. It doesn't happen that, okay, we'll wait until February and have Christmas. So you're getting into crowded situations. You're getting in, even if you're in the automobile and you stop to get a bite to eat and the children are fretful. So what you just need to do is plan certain activities that can take place to distract the child from some of the complications that are going on. Standing in line at the airport, if you can possibly do so, have one of the parents or an older child sit with the other one, so they're not all drawn in the trauma of the airplane running late and we've got to wait an hour, and there's many things that you can do to distract the child and to make it a happier voyage for them, so that when they get home or when they get to where they're going for the holiday time, they're in a good mood.
I think something you said, June, really speaks to this, that from what you're saying, it's helping families and getting through any type of holiday season and get-together is in the expectation. I remember you had told me, you'd given me these words when I was going to my own family reunion. You said, go without expectations.
Yes. But the children, they don't know how to do that. So it's up to the adults to work with the children because their expectation. However, you can distract them easily away from things by giving them other activities, and absolutely, because if you're expecting something and it doesn't turn out, then who's disappointed?
Yes, it's very true, because children do tend, their nature is to live in the moment. And I think that as adults, we have an agenda, and we tend to pass that on to our children. And if we let them be in their present moment, they will be less likely to be anxious or expecting some type of acrimony or distress from the situation.
Absolutely, and I have to tell another story because you say things that bring things up in me. So I'm going to tell you a story of one of the most wonderful Christmases ever. This is when Mama was still alive, Miss Jessie was alive.
Yes.
So here's what the nephews, which were her grandsons, decided they would do unbeknownst to anybody. They take a truck up into the mountains. They fill the back of the truck full of snow. Now, mind you, the sun is shining down in the Pasadena, Sierra Madre area. Before daylight, they are throwing snowballs against our windows to wake us up. And they dumped the entire pile of snow in the driveway, so every one of the kids that had not even seen snow were coming into the house and outside throwing snowballs. And Mama was putting snow down everybody's back. She was running up and down the hallway, and these are the things you remember, the joy. And what did it cost? It cost the creativity and the imagination of those kids to go up to the mountain and fill that truck full of snow and bring it down to experience a holiday.
Yes, I think that is so beautiful, because that speaks to what you talked about, that if we look at the holidays as a time of connecting and creating those family traditions, there are going to be instances where there's someone in the family that we don't get along with, or there's some unresolved argument, issue, or trauma from times past, and your suggestion of separating the holiday activities, or being with some family members at one time and other family members, will certainly do a great deal to alleviate that. And June, I just want to say that we see that there just is a wealth of information and issues around the holiday times that, as you said, we certainly will have to do another broadcast discussing the many issues that can come up, the stressors that we experience around our holiday time.
And I'd love for us to come back again and do the series, because there's a lot of depression. We went through some of the trauma of what can happen that destroys the season for people. And I believe that if we can give them some tips of things they can do ahead of time, and this is what you're doing, you and Bob both are doing is in the podcasting, is to help people learn the things they can do to be stress-free now. Yeah. And I think it's so important if we'll do another segment because we haven't touched on some of these things that we need to help others get through.
Wow, June, every time we speak with you, the time really flies. So I just want to end on this last question with you. I'd like you to just discuss briefly specific coaching tips you can give our listeners to successfully transition into the new year so that they have a better chance of sticking to and achieving their New Year's goals and objectives that they may have set for themselves. What few coaching tips can you just give our audience?
Oh, thank you. And I am still one of these people that I'll make a long list of my New Year's resolutions, and I may not accomplish them, but I love to list them. And it may be little tiny things. People should not expect to do everything they put on their list, but there's a joy in marking off what you can do. So on your New Year's resolutions, do something small. Maybe go to see a relative that you haven't seen for a while. Put the things that bring joy in your life and also your accomplishments. So as you do so, and you can accomplish a few things early in it, it just gives you the joy of seeing that happen. But don't set your expectations so high that I've got to run myself to death to get all these things done. Just relax and live in the moment.
Thank you so much, June. We are certainly going to have you back again to speak more about holiday stress. I'd like to remind our listeners that you can find out more about what June does on her website, www.asla.com. June, thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us. Is there anything special that you'd like to leave our audience with about your upcoming events, or any final tip of how they can relieve their holiday stress?
Yes, again, just as we have spoken about, the expectations. The expectation should be from you. What do you expect yourself to do to blend in and make it easier for other people? Don't have the expectation placed on somebody else. Live in what you can do to make the adjustment in you and rearrange what is necessary to have a beautiful, wonderful holiday season.
Excellent. Thank you, June. And thank you, our listeners, for listening. Today, our featured guest has been Master Coach June Davidson, President of American Seminar Leaders Association. And I want to thank our audience for listening, wherever you are, in whatever time zone you are in. We welcome and look forward to your comments about our show. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us and learn how to get control of your schedule or easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, or anxiety, feel free to call us at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and your first session is absolutely free. Call today to schedule your appointment. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of www.StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.